about this case? Turkish President Erdogan, you've had a bit to say about him in the past. Yeah. He's actually prosecuted 2,000 people in Turkey over the past 3 years for insulting the president.
And that is tyranny. He is a man who has concentrated power. He's elected, at least he's come to power through elections. And now that he is in power, every individual within Turkish society who deems to criticize him is accused of insulting him or the state of Turkey or some other infraction, and they're imprisoned. And I think for the context of the German satirist is he was doing his job. I think satire is extremely important in liberal society. It is what stands between us and violence. And I think that the Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, should have explained it to Mr. Erdogan that this is an internal affair, and he had. It's
pretty hard to explain if you saw the poem. It's pretty insulting, sexually explicit, and even referring to the size of his genitals. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
This is a comedian, for goodness sake. He's a satirist, and if you start to care as the head of a state of a country like Turkey, 80 million people, and you start to care about that sort of thing, it just shows how insecure that man is, how tyrannical he is, and the fact that because he's shut down all sorts of internal criticism within Turkey, wants to become a member of the EU, that even European citizens who at least are used to some form of freedom of expression cannot criticize him. I think it is deplorable, it is appalling. This man should be released and Mr. Erdogan should be put in his place.
Jean-Christophe.
Thank you. If everybody in North America is forced to attend at school training in sensitivity on Holocaust awareness and is taught to study the final solution, about which nothing was actually done by this country or North America or the United Kingdom while it was going on, but let's say as if in compensation for that, everyone's made to swallow an official and unalterable story of it now, and it's taught as the great moral exemplar, the moral equivalent of the morally lacking elements of the Second World War, the way of stilling our uneasy conscience about that combat. If that's the case with everybody, as it more or less is, and one person gets up and says, you know about this Holocaust, I'm not sure it even happened. In fact, I'm pretty certain it didn't. Indeed, I begin to wonder if the only thing is that the Jews brought a little bit of violence on themselves. That person doesn't just have a right to speak. That person's right to speak must be given extra protection, because what he has to say must have taken him some effort to come up with, might contain a grain of historical truth, might in any case give people to think about why do they know what they already think they know. How do I know that I know this, except that I've always been taught this and never heard anything else? It's always worth establishing first principles. It's always worth saying, what would you do if you met a Flat Earth Society member? Come to think of it, how can I prove the Earth is round? Am I sure about the theory of evolution? I know it's supposed to be true. Here's someone who says there's no such thing, it's all intelligent design. How sure am I of my own views? Don't take refuge in the false security of consensus and the feeling that whatever you think, you're bound to be okay because you're in the safely moral majority. One of the proudest moments of my life, that's to say, in the recent past, has been defending the British historian David Irving, who is now in prison in Austria for nothing more than the potential of uttering an unwelcome thought on Austrian soil. He didn't actually say anything in Austria. He wasn't even accused of saying anything. He was accused of perhaps planning to say something that violated an Austrian law that says only one version of the history of the Second World War may be taught in our brave little Tyrolean republic. The republic that gave us Kurt Waldheim as Secretary General of the United Nations, a man wanted in several countries for war crimes. You know, the country that has Jörg Haider, the leader of its own fascist party, in the cabinet that sent David Irving to jail. Made Austria famous, given it its reputation, by any chance? Just while I've got you. I hope there are some Austrians here to be upset by it. Well, a pity if not, but the two great achievements of Austria are to have convinced the world that Hitler was German and Beethoven was Viennese. Now to this proud record they can add, they have the courage finally to face their past and lock up a British historian who's committed no crime except that of thought and writing. And that's a scandal. And I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
I think we just have to acknowledge publicly and loudly and incessantly that free speech has to win. So anyone who, in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo massacre, wondered, well, wait a minute, were those cartoons at all racist? Because that was going to make me feel differently about it. That, opening that door is just a kind of moral blindness that we should have immediately inoculated ourselves against. I mean, that was just, and people like Reza and Glenn Greenwald, that's the door they opened. It's like, oh, these were not kosher cartoons, these were racist. Of course, they weren't, in fact. If you understood anything about French politics,
satire.
yeah, and these people were on the right side of all these liberal questions in France, if you understood.
And by the
French
way,
culture.
not focusing on Islam more than any other religion.
No, yeah, they were
way more were about Christianity.
Right,
So,
right.
and they did plenty of stuff on
But
TV.
even the cartoons that on their face seemed racist,
Right.
and they were kind of a racial caricature, they in fact, if you understood the context, weren't racist, right?
Yeah.
But never mind that. The sense that the sense that there's a tension between freedom of religion and freedom of speech is a total moral and political illusion. I mean, so there's absolutely nothing you and I could say in this conversation that infringes upon somebody else's freedom of religion. We can disparage religion all we want. That doesn't affect someone else's political rights to practice it. They can raise their kids however they want. We simply need to admit that religion should be subjected to the same kind of criticism and scrutiny and satire as any other set of ideas. As you point out, we do this for something like Mormonism. So you can have a play like the Book of Mormon and no one gets killed.
Sure.
It's unthinkable to have an analogous play about Islam, and we have just acquiesced to that difference. We have just said, you know, it's just, yeah, it's too dangerous, and the problem is not that it's too dangerous. The problem is that anyone like me would want to do it, right? Anyone like someone like Trey Parker or Matt Stone,
right?
Those assholes, they shouldn't go after Islam, right?
Right.
That's where the moral the sensibilities of liberals seem to be right now. Whereas we should be acknowledging how excruciating it is that there is this difference, even in our own societies, between Islam and something like Mormonism. Whereas
now, not so long ago, people were rightly showing solidarity with people who suffered the atrocity in Paris, right? And we were all, nous sommes Charlie at that point. And the same politicians, the same British politicians who were je suis Charlie, have now passed a law that would allow them effectively to censor university campuses. The same politicians who said je suis Charlie are saying that the Home Secretary should be able to issue directions to university campuses, including yours, my friends, including yours, to say what de-radicalisation looks like. And no doubt they are offended by all sorts of things that I think they should not be offended by. The bottom line is everybody loves human rights, including free speech. They love their own. It's other people's are a bit more of a problem. This motion doesn't say the right to incite violence, it says the right to offend. And I'm sure I've offended all sorts of people, including my teammates here tonight. This stuff was paid for, this freedom of speech and these human rights were paid for by generations long ago, and they were paid for in courage and in blood. They weren't designed to make us comfortable. They were designed to keep us free. Thanks for listening.
Where you go, wow, something really has veered off the path here. Not just in politics, but in society as a whole, that we've really lost something that is so important to us.
I think we really have. I mean, mine is just a minor episode, but there have been a large number of cases where university campuses, there have been protests that have prevented people from going to speak at universities because they just don't like what they think they're going to hear. And it's really sad when you think that a university, of all places, is the place where ideas should be aired and exchanged and disputed and argued over. Go along and argue. That's what the university is for. This sort of soft, sappy inability to take something that you find offensive and hurtful. It's pathetic. It's contemptible.
That's applause worthy right there.